To me, it's not the Talbot County I know, and it's kind of come as a bit of a surprise, I think, to everyone, the nastiness that's out there, the personal attacks that have been taking place. I think there have been groups over the years who have advocated very strongly for their beliefs and their candidates, and I applaud them, and I think that's really what, to me, politics should be about. You should be out shouting from the rooftops why you support somebody, why they're the best choice. But I think going in the opposite direction and attacking individuals, the smear campaign, it just is, it's pathetic. Yeah. It really is pathetic. Yeah. I think there's a difference between criticizing them and supporting your own agenda and doing it in a positive fashion. You don't have to be negative when you criticize someone. You can say, I don't agree with this decision and here's why. You don't just slam the person individually. The whole group started with the initial plan that they wanted to unseat Corey and Chuck and me, all three of them. And then they changed their philosophy, and the explanation given was Chuck has too many friends, and before evil Jennifer showed up, we could manage Corey. And that sort of seemed to be the gist of the explanation. So it's like, let's just go after Jennifer, and if we get rid of her, we'll be fine. I would be willing to bet that if I took 4 years of everything you've said, I could take quotes out of there to make you look like just about anything I wanted to make you look like. And I think that's true of anyone. That many of the quotes were taken from work sessions when ideas are debated, discussed, thrown around. To me, we're doing an injustice to the county if we don't think about a lot of ideas, if we don't give them an opportunity to see the light of day. One of the issues they mentioned several times was strip malls. Well, there was never any indication, never any statement that we should put strip malls all over the county. But to totally prohibit it could end up preventing it in a place that might be appropriate.
And we're not an example of
that? Strip mall might, in an appropriate strip mall, and I don't even like the terminology strip mall, was the idea that you could have one building housing several small businesses. The perfect example that came to my mind is someplace like Cordova, where you've got some areas that are kind of older buildings that are somewhat ramshackle, putting in something there that might house a small coffee shop luncheonette in one unit, right next door to a dry cleaner where you could pick up and drop off your clothes. They wouldn't be doing the work on site, but for the people of Cordova, it would be a convenience. Maybe a card shop, a mom and pop type of general convenience store, something that community could be served by that might consist of 3 or 4 units max.
Yeah.
But those were the types of things that we were looking at. Yeah. Not your, half a mile long highway frontage, big box stores, not by any means. I don't think anyone on the council has any intention or any desire or any vision of seeing this county developed in any way, shape, or form as you might see in other areas. I think the key was always, again, to at least keep the door unlocked for some innovative idea. And when you lock that door, somebody may come to you with the greatest idea ever, and you can't let them in. So I think there was a real focus on let's at least keep the door unlocked.
Right.
Not so much that we want to promote anything, but who knows what tomorrow's going to bring? Who knows what idea might be appropriate? But one area they talked about was the extension of sewer, and how there was concern that the extension of sewer lines could result in rezoning that could result in increased density and increased development. And this is something that from the beginning, it was clear to me that's not possible. Maryland law is very strong on that. And Maryland law has for over 50 years said that improvements to sewer facilities does not in itself create a change in character that would warrant rezoning. There was a lot of discussion over the so-called Amendment 4 that Mr. Watson wrote Laura Price offered, that limited it to entitlement to connect to sewer, would not in and of itself allow rezoning. I ran the two different versions by several land use attorneys and the County Office of Law, and they all said that the broader one that says changes to facilities would be much more restrictive. It would not only include the entitlement to connect, it would not only sewer line is run down a particular road, it would also include if you have a wastewater treatment facility that's enlarged, a new one put in, you have a change to the standard to which their discharge is. So it would have covered an immense number of circumstances as opposed to just entitlement to connect. And yet that was pushed back drastically. No, we don't want that. The problem I see now is that ours only says entitlement to connect to sewer prohibits rezoning, whereas the state says the much broader definition. And when you look at it from a legal background, you now have a conflict between the state and the county. And that's the very essence of what lawsuits are made of, is conflict of laws. So I was disappointed that we could not get the broader definition, the broader terminology, which was given much more protection than what we did end up with. On the short-term rental, it's been said that we rejected 3 modest proposals. The modest proposals we rejected was one, that you could only rent a property out if it was your primary residence, which pretty much eliminates the vast majority of short-term rentals in this county, which primarily are second homes. I mean, I look back at my own parents years ago. They came down here, they knew they wanted to retire here, and be it good or be it bad, they found the home of their dreams about 8 years before my dad was ready to retire. They bought it, and they rented it a couple of times a year. I mean, this is going back 30 years, so it was long before this was an issue. But by doing that, they were able to pretty much keep that and get it when they wanted to. And then as soon as they could, they moved down here and lived down here full-time for years. And I think there are a lot, I know there are a lot of people, because I know some of them who have done exactly that. They're chomping at the bit to get here. They're very committed to this community, but by renting out their property once, twice, 3 times a year, it helps pay the taxes and the maintenance. So that was one of the so-called minor. To me, that's not really minor. That's a pretty major event. Another one was that we did not require a commercial insurance policy. We don't require an insurance policy from any other type of entity in the entire county. No one else has to provide it. Not an inn, not a B&B, not a restaurant, not a hotel. And it just seemed it was singled out to try to prevent people from doing this because there was no legitimate reason. We did put in very stiff steps in the application process to provide for health and safety. In fact, I added to it that anybody who was on a well and septic would have to have the well and septic inspected to make sure the water was safe, to make sure the septic was operational. You have to have an inspection to show that you basically meet fire code, you meet building code for all the health and safety issues. So we're taking steps in that measure to make sure these properties are appropriate for visitors, but not to have an insurance policy. And a third one that was asked for was that if you rent out your property, if you have a short-term rental, you'd have to provide the county with copies of your bank statements and your income taxes. We don't do that to anybody else. It just seemed overreaching into your personal affairs, that because I choose to rent out my house during waterfowl, I don't really think it's up to the county to look at my bank account. So I did not see that these were modest proposals. I thought they were rather serious. But what we did do is we put together an application process that is far more rigorous than it ever has been before. Anybody who applies, they have to give notice by return receipt mail to all of their neighbors. So all of their neighbors have an opportunity to object. There will be a public hearing on every new application before a license is submitted. That property has to be visited by a member of the planning staff to determine that is appropriate. There are requirements that the property, the exterior portion of the property, be appropriately screened from neighbors to make sure it's not an intrusion on the neighborhood. There are requirements that if you are in a community that has any type of covenants or bylaws, you have to state, yes, I am, or no, I'm not. Well, clearly, if you say no, you're not, and all of your neighbors get notice that you've applied, they're going to show up and complain at that public hearing. In addition, we've put in some pretty stiff penalties, and we've put in penalties that are financial. The way they would work, if we charge somebody with violation and they're found that they have violated the terms of the agreement that they have with the county as far as handling their short-term rental, and they don't pay that fine, it becomes a lien on their property, just like taxes. If they don't pay it, it could go to tax sale. So we have the enforcement mechanisms in place. We've actually contracted with an outside group that monitors all types of online advertising. Anybody who advertises a property in Talbot County will be required to have their Talbot County license included in the ad. If we find people who aren't doing it, we can penalize them. We can make them get a license, or we can tell them they're never going to get one because they failed to follow our law. We've had a new inspector who's going to be available on weekends, which we haven't had in the past. This is a new addition to our liquor inspector. They will be handling both. So we've really taken an awful lot of steps to be able to regulate this industry, this new phenomena, and make it work for everybody. We listened to both sides. We really did. And the end result is something that neither side seems to like a whole lot. One side thinks it's too strict, one side thinks it's too lenient. And sometimes that's when you know you hit the right combination, when neither side is completely happy. If short-term rentals were to go away, we've looked at numbers, we've talked to merchants in St. Michael's, they pretty much all agree. Half the stores and restaurants would be gone because there is so much support. People who come here for a week spend a lot of money in our stores and a lot of money going out, going to restaurants, going shopping, going on boat trips, renting kayaks, renting all types of things. They really bring the money in that helps our community survive. So it's not something I want to see go away. Well, there was a lot of concern that the council didn't do what certain members of the public demanded it do. That doesn't mean the council didn't listen. The council received hundreds and hundreds of emails and phone calls, as well as the people we talk to on the street, the people you see when you're in the grocery store, the people you see when you're supporting a community event, a fire company breakfast. We hear from a lot of people. It isn't just the ones who show up at the public hearing that we listen to, or at least I don't. I want to listen to everybody who wants to share their opinion. So we got letters, we got emails, we got phone calls, and they were from one extreme to the other, as they often are. Where we ended up is that we put together a 15-member workforce who did a lot of work on the science of sound. They looked at what other areas are doing. They looked at the pros and cons of a lot of things. When they first voted, they voted unanimously that 60 decibels was a reasonable, logical level. They then came back and talked some more, and it was suggested that 65, which is the state level, might be more appropriate. And they voted on that. 65 carried, but it was a split vote. The council, when they considered it, chose to go with the 60. That is the lowest standard in the entire state of Maryland. Nobody is lower than that. The state standard is 65, and 22 out of 24 counties use 65. We are half of that at 60. Only Charles County and Talbot County use 60 as their level. So I don't see that this was a caving into special interests. It was a reasonable, logical level that reflects what is normal. Sitting here talking to you right now, I'm at 60 decibels. That's the norm. 60 to 65 is normal conversation at 3 feet. It is not loud. I don't know that there are things that I would have done differently, because I really do believe that in the process of working on the comprehensive plan, it was important to have an open mind to all sorts of ideas and to be willing to discuss different ideas, different proposals, different thoughts. And I think to do less is not giving the citizens of Talbot County what they deserve. I think going into it with a closed mind and saying we are just going to rubber stamp what we've done in the past isn't fair. We really need to have open minds. Doesn't mean we agree with everything, and doesn't mean we like every proposal we end up talking about. But you need to talk them out. And that kind of falls into this claim that I control Corey Pack and Chuck Callahan, which is, to me, it's a bit insulting to both of them because they're both highly intelligent, highly professional gentlemen with great careers and obviously very capable. Chuck, Corey, and I work very well together. And no differently than Annapolis, no differently than Washington, D.C., when there is a bill before us, when there is something, I will call Chuck, Chuck will call Corey, Corey will call me. I mean, how it begins is, it just begins, and we start talking. And frequently we talk for quite a while, and frequently we don't agree at all, but we talk to each other and we bring out our ideas and our thoughts and, well, what ifs? Well, did you think about it this way? Well, what would that mean? And as a result of that, we work it through to the point that the three of us are pretty much in agreement. And we found that all three of us are open-minded enough and respectful enough that we can do it well together. So do we end up voting together frequently? Yes, but we've done the work behind to get there. And we've lobbied each other in a sense to get what we need. And it's not me lobbying them, it's just as often them lobbying me. I mean, there have been more than once that I can think of that Chuck has said, no, you're wrong on this one, and here's why. And I'll listen to him, and I'll come around to what he's telling me. And the same with Corey. And so I think we have been effective because we've been able to work together in that fashion. Yeah. Not because anybody is controlling anybody else, but because we have a good, open working relationship. I'd like to see, and it is kind of frustrating to me, how much time, how much attention, how much money has been thrown at this issue, these issues, how much misleading information is out there. Our county has so many more important things to do. I was at a luncheon last week where Dr. Griffith from Talbot County Public Schools was speaking. 49% of our students this year are on free and reduced meals due to their financial circumstances. That number is rising dramatically year over year. It's something we need to be aware of. It's something we need to be trying to find economic solutions to help these families have better paying jobs. 51% of our incoming kindergarten this year are classified demographically as belonging to minorities. And the statistics traditionally show that those minority children come from families that are more apt to be living in poverty or close to poverty. They tend to be children who are not getting the opportunities as a 1, 2, 3-year-old at home where somebody's reading to them, somebody's nurturing them. They don't have the opportunity to be going to preschool. There is so much we need to be aware of along those lines. Our care packs, where we're feeding children on the weekends because they don't know where their meals are coming from. This year, the number of children in our schools that are homeless is 165. That's almost 50% more than last year. Those are the things this county needs to be working on, not worrying about whether or not the amendments offered on short-term rentals were big deals or little deals. We really need to be working for our people, and that's what I want to be able to get back in there and help do, and recognize these are Talbot County citizens, and if half the families qualify for free and reduced meals, it says a lot about what this county really is versus what some tend to think it is.